How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm fine.
Thanks for finally taking the paper copy. There is so Jim had something happen to him that it's good for us to talk about right now, which is his electronic copy never made it to him. God bless Abingdon. I love them. I love them. But ugh, when it comes to tech, they're just not up to speed. and and granted, they're putting this test out there for free. They did all of the programming for it, generated it, all of that, which is why like I had special things that I asked them to do for the test, and they said no, that costs too much money. It's fine. But for whatever reason, some filters just the results can't get past the filters on some servers. And for a while, it was the Arkansas United Methodist Church server. No one with an arumc.org address could get gospel discipleship results. I'm like, this is going to be a real problem. We're going to have to get past it. But some service providers, that sort of thing, their filters are set that for whatever reason, gospel discipleship gets caught in their net. So if that happens with your folks in your class, then just encourage them to take the paper copy in the book. And if they haven't picked up a book, if they're just, just sitting in, then let me know and I can get you all a paper copy that you can print off. But thank you. Jim did eventually take it that way. So we add in with Jim's arrival a Matthean Johannine. So, hey, another Johannine. Yeah. So I'm marking Johannine, and Johannines are rare in the Methodist Church. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute here. So, anyway, I hope Susan joins us shortly, but let's go ahead so I want to honor your time. So let me go ahead and open us in prayer, and then we'll get to the training. Lord, thank you so much for these wonderful folks who have given of themselves and have committed to guiding others through this journey as we all learn a little bit more about our discipleship. Guide our conversation today, help them to learn everything that they need to learn in this space, but also if they need more, of course, I'm here. But grant that this time might be fruitful and prepare us for the work that is ahead of us. We ask all these things in your holy name. Amen. Hey, here we go. There's Carrie. How are ya? We just got started. I just did prayer. So
there we go.
All right. And we've got now a Luke and Mattheans. So we've got Luke and Markins, Luke and Mattheans, a Matthean Johannine, and a Mark and Matthean here. Okay. So thank you all so much for doing this. I am going to, you'll get a lot of background on gospel discipleship through the sermons, but I'll give you kind of the overall of how this came to be. This came out of my work with conference offices. The bishop put me in charge of helping churches develop intentional discipleship systems. And that's having an intentional plan for how we grow in our discipleship. Churches that do that, people that do that, stay more deeply committed to their faith. And churches grow if they can articulate a discipleship plan to folks. So it was a good idea. And the bishop wanted me to come up with something and hand it out to the churches and have them put it in place. And I wouldn't do that because it wouldn't take the who question into account. And you have to take the who question into account. I said, if we hand out something to the churches, it's going to work for some of them and it's going to flop at a whole bunch of others. So I get, honestly, amongst us, I get sick of the conference shoving things down and saying, do this and it'll save you. Jesus is who saves us, but whatever. So anyway, I wanted something that could take the who question into account, and was working with some churches, and we were studying the last words Jesus speaks in each of the Gospels. And that's when I discovered that each of those last words points to a particular pathway of understanding your discipleship. And once I could see that, I looked back through each of the Gospels and could see the path laid out. And once I saw that, I thought, I bet I could come up with a test that would reveal what story resonates most with people. that we're basically shaped by these stories. That's how we know about discipleship, is what we've been shared through the Gospels, and these stories shape our understanding of how we live that out. But also, we have 4 of them, and I think we have 4 on purpose, because 4 gives us the opportunity to reach all kinds of different people, and for the story to have meaning for all kinds of different people. They were written for 4 different communities. They resonated with 4 different ways of being, and so I think that this gives us the kind of maximum flexibility to be able to be meaningful for basically anyone, especially because you might find yourself being a combination of a couple of them, or sometimes I've had some people that have tested evenly across the board on all 4. And so there's just a lot of possibilities for that. The other great thing about it is it helps us understand our discipleship. It's going to give everyone a common vocabulary. So how many of y'all have taken the Myers-Briggs test or an Enneagram? Okay. All right. And that gives you a language, right, to talk about kind of your self-understanding and your self-awareness. And for other people that have that language too, I can go up to people that have had the Enneagram and say, I'm a 1 with a 9 wing. And they know what I'm saying, right? And probably feel sorry for me. But yeah, so it gives you this common language. Well, this is going to do this for discipleship. I have watched it with churches. There are now whole people across the state, because I did most of the testing of this in Arkansas. There are people all the way across the state that will come up to me and say, I had such a marking moment the other day. Or I really had this moment where I got to live into my Mattheanness. In fact, Keisha did it today. I tested the staff a couple of weeks ago, and we talked through what that means for our dynamics. And Keisha kind of flipped the script on the food pantry today and decided they were going to release everything early so they could get everyone home before it got really bad and rainy. And so she just kind of rearranged how they did things. And just told the volunteers, we're going to do it differently this week. Here you go. And she said to me, she goes, I'm really living into my markedness right now. I said, yes, you are. So it's going to give people a vocabulary to talk to each other about their discipleship and to celebrate that about themselves. The other thing that I love about this is it really does start from a place of, because there's no one gospel that's better than any of the other gospels. They all made it into the Bible. They all are beautiful and have their purposes and tell unique things about Jesus and how we relate to Jesus. And so it really starts from a place of, this is who you are. And that's wonderful. Now let's help you live more fully into that reality. And it does it for individuals, and it does it for churches. So I'll use myself as an example. I have long felt frustrated about the fact that I don't fit a typical mold for a Methodist pastor. And I felt some shame about some things. For instance, I'll just go ahead and tell y'all, never been on a mission trip, not once. And I was like, if anybody finds that out, I'm going to get kicked out, right? And then I had this understanding of understanding our discipleship and realized that's very Matthean, and I have almost no Matthean in me. And so I was like, oh, well, that's why I've never been drawn to that. Instead, I'm Mark and Johanna, and that also helped me understand why I sometimes feel like a round peg getting pushed into a square hole in the Methodist church, because Methodists almost always test primarily Lucan, secondarily Matthean. And so here are all these Lucan Mattheans, and I am Mark and Johanna. And so of course I don't fit the typical mold. And of course there are places where it's very exciting, the partnership that I form with churches, but also there's some places where we have some misunderstanding. But now that I know that, I can come in the door knowing what kind of minister I am and how that's going to fit into the church that I'm appointed to. It's made a huge difference. And it's allowed me to celebrate the person that I am and to celebrate the churches that I'm serving and to know how we can better work together. So I really will see, and I've had churches that churches just are over and over told, you know what, if you would, you're not good enough as this church. You're not growing enough, you're not doing enough, you're not blah, 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 blah enough. If you would do this, like this church over here that's really successful, if you would do that, then you would grow. And then churches try to do that, and it blows up in their face. And then they just feel awful, right? And that's not where we're going. We're going, okay, who are we? Okay, that's great. Now let's be more us. And this is how we step into that. And we're going to do that on an individual level. And then as we get more folks tested across the church, we'll be able to step in it more fully as a church. So I'm really, really excited about this. I've seen it be transformative over and over and over and over for churches. I have not seen a lot of official intentional discipleship systems put in place, but we can talk about that at some other time. Basically, because I work mostly with Lucan churches, because Methodists tend to be Lucan, and Lucans don't like systems because systems get in the way of people, and they seem too impersonal, and so Lucans kind of resist putting a system in place. What they don't resist is putting a way of relating to each other in place. And that's what's going to happen. We will have a better way of relating to each other. And so that's going to do the work that it needs to do. Okay, that's an overall. Do you all have general questions about gospel discipleship before we talk about how you'll facilitate the groups? Okay. You saw that I sent out the leaders, actually facilitators guide, and I want us to recognize the fact that you are facilitators. You do not have to be the be-all, end-all of understanding gospel discipleship. If someone wants to talk to the be-all, end-all of gospel discipleship, send them to me. I wrote the books. Right? Tell them to make an appointment and we'll sit down and talk. You are really just to be there as guides of the conversation. More than anything else. Now, there is, I do want you all to get both a participant guide and a congregation guide. And you'll see that for the facilitator, for everybody, there's a section to read for each week in the book. But then there's a little bit of additional stuff for the facilitator. And so basically what I'm asking you to read are the pieces. The congregation guide is meant for a whole church to understand how they relate together and structure that. So I'm highlighting a few pieces out that help with each type to kind of guide them in understanding, first of all, how they'll relate better with each other, but second of all, what their strengths are and what their challenges are as that type. And so that's just to allow you to kind of balance out the conversation or help add a couple of little different pieces into it. But otherwise, you're basically there to ask the questions that are in the book and guide the conversation and make sure everyone stays hospitable to each other. And so that's the part at the beginning where I talk about what makes a good group, right? So I'll pull that up and basically hit those high points. Good communication is important. Make sure that you're following up as a small group. It's just good practice to follow up with everybody that's supposed to be there. And you can do that, or someone else in the group who has that gift can do that. Just have somebody somebody who's sort of assigned to just check in with folks, especially the people that miss between weeks. They may miss for perfectly good reason. They were sick or they were out of town, although out of town's getting harder and harder as an excuse. Or they, had a conflict with something for their family or something along those lines. But it's important to follow up with folks and help them know that it mattered that they weren't there. That is one of the key things. That was one of the key things about the Wesleyan movement, was they created these small accountability groups that asked people how it was with their souls. And when you missed, someone went to your house to find out why you missed. We don't even have to go to people's houses now. There's a myriad of ways we can sit at our desk and contact folks. So use good communication. Within that, share, make space for inclusive communication. One of the things that I said is, when you want to celebrate someone's discipleship, it's fine to say, what do we love about Mark and disciples? But when we're dealing with the more challenging things, it's better to frame it in terms of that understanding of discipleship. So you say something like, what challenges you most about the Mark and understanding of discipleship? That's how that question is phrased, instead of what bothers you about Mark and disciples. So we just want to make sure that everyone is honored for who they are, because what you will find is that every type has spaces where that relate to the other types. There's a little bit of crossover, and then every type has spaces where they're going to butt heads. And so it's helpful for us to just talk through that. And again, to just understand it's not people being mean, it's not people being selfish, it's people having different understandings of discipleship. And so if we can frame it in those ways, then it takes the personal out of that reality, okay? So good communication, a hospitable space. If you've got anybody that's struggling with technology, that needs a little bit of help with this, then let me know, and we'll work to get them included as much as possible. There is potential for face-to-face in a small group setting. So if any of you are thinking about maybe doing face-to-face, just let me know that, and we'll talk through it, and talk through what you can do to make that a safe environment. And you might do a mix. You might do face-to-face, but with an option to come in on Zoom and have both options present. If you're still just most comfortable with technology, that's fine, and that's fully approved, and we're all set for that. But just let me know if you want to do the face-to-face place, and we'll talk about how to make that hospitable. And then commitment and consistency, just especially for kicking off of gospel discipleship, we will tie these in. The sermons start the 6th of September with an introductory sermon, and then every Sunday after that for the next 4, so 5 altogether. So we ask that the groups meet once a week during those. We'll talk about how you move forward from there, and whether you want to continue meeting once a week, whether you want to continue with this process, or you just want to do gospel discipleship for these 5 weeks and then go back to other curriculum that you've got as a group. We'll talk about that in just a minute here. But yeah, you at least for these, we hope that you will come along each week on that. Okay, so any questions generally about overall good practices for facilitation? Janet, are you talking? If you're talking, you need to unmute.
Wayne probably wishes she can mute me. Should the Sunday school, like our Sunday school class, should each of them get their own book? Is that?
They are all welcome to. And we can disperse the books in any number of ways. If you as the leader want to pick them all up and then drop them off your people's houses, you can do that. If you want to ask them to come by the church and get them themselves, we can do that. If we need to mail them, then let us know that, and we will put one in the mail to you as well. So just shoot me an email, and we'll get that added in, and if that's what they need. But we have plenty of books for everyone that wants to participate. So yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and people are asking what the cost is. There's no cost. Okay.
This Amplify, is that the video? Or
And I will show you that in just a minute. And that's going to be awesome, not just for gospel discipleship, but y'all are going to see some really cool stuff that we can do with that. So what else? What other overall questions do y'all have?
I can ask a question. I have a pretty big Sunday school group, and we haven't actually been meeting since we haven't been on Sundays. So my question is, how big is too big? Because there are quite a few of us. I have no idea who's going to show up. So should we hold several different sessions, or do you have any guidance on that? Or
I do. I would say I have done this with fairly large groups. You have less discussion when that takes place, and this is a space where discussion is very helpful. So you could do it large and just, you know, recognize that maybe not everybody that's being invited to share will have a chance to share. You could use the breakout room option, and just like type some of the questions in the chat, and then split folks off into different breakout rooms and let them do the discussing there, and then have everybody come back and kind of hit the high points of what they discussed. Or you could break into different groups. And I think that you will have a sense of what's most helpful for your group to do, right? So, and if you want to chat more about that, we can, but I think that you'll know your group better than I will, in all honesty. What else? What other questions? Overall questions? Okay. Well, let's talk through what a typical gathering will take. Everyone will have readings to do in advance of coming. You know, theoretically, there's always lots of people that don't do the reading in advance, right? But theoretically, they will have read something in advance to get in there. And then the first thing that we say to do is to watch the videos. Now, how many of you have ever shared a video on Zoom before? Okay, Pat has, Carrie has. Okay, here's the trick with sharing a video on Zoom. So you would go down to share screen. You would click on share screen, and there's that box that pops up that's got all of your options of where you can share your screen. In the bottom left-hand corner, and I think this is the same on all devices, but I'm not 100% sure. In the bottom left-hand corner, there are two boxes that can be checked, and I just wish they would have these automatically checked. I don't know why they don't, but one is share computer sound, and the other is optimize screen sharing for video clip. You want to make sure you check both of those boxes, because otherwise it will sound like you're showing a video from 5,000 miles away. So make sure you click those two buttons. We're going to share from Amplify. So let me tell you all about Amplify. I'm very excited, and I'm going to share my screen and show you all this. So Amplify is a subscription program through Abingdon and Cokesbury. This is a Methodist-run subscription program. The church is paying for membership for all of our folks. So this is prepaid for curriculum for everybody every month. And we have here, the first line is where we're loading our children's Sunday school lessons. So Pam is preparing a video for every week to go with the Sunday school lessons, and it will be loaded here. This is a little video that explains about the fact that that's going to happen. And then to talk a little bit about Amplify. But then the second line here is gospel discipleship. And you have a video for each week loaded up. So I'll go ahead and hit play on the introduction video.
Andrea, it's great to see you. I have the results from your gospel discipleship type assessment that you took the other day.
And I'm excited to be here to learn more about my discipleship path, but before we get started, I need clarification about what discipleship types actually mean.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll be happy. First, I'll talk a little bit more about what.
So that is where you'll find the gospel discipleship videos. Let me ask you all something. How good was the sound on that? Could you hear it okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Making sure it was okay, because if you get in there and you find that those videos are hard to hear, or if you're finding you're having trouble streaming, let me know, and I'll send you the original files. So here's the thing. So here's the thing. Abingdon has not actually loaded Gospel Discipleship yet up to Amplify. They just found out that they weren't loaded because they thought they were. So those are the original cuts. I was like, I have those videos. I'll just throw them up there. So, so if you need the original cuts to download onto your computer, if that turns out to be easier for you to share, let me know and I'll shoot those to you. Okay. It's the advantage of having the author in your church. But I do want to go back and share again to show you more of what's available. So for future, whenever you're looking for curriculum to do with any of your groups, there is a ton of stuff out here. Adult study research sources, you can see there's women's Bible study stuff. They've got their Advent stuff already up. There's these little clips called the Bible in 30 seconds or less. They've got stuff about worship and inspiration, Wesleyan resources, highlights, all kinds of stuff. We will also start building more, like we'll have Zach's choices for youth and their families. We will have Sandra's choices for youth and their families. We may have some special stuff about music. When we can live stream, our live stream will go here. We will start loading some of our devotionals and all of that so that you can use this space to go to for any of the videos that we're producing. And you can use this for your own personal growth as well. You know, if you wanted to, if you're waiting to, you know, get the kids from somewhere and you wanted to just watch 2 or 3 of those Bible in 30 seconds or less, you can do that. It's downloadable in an app that you just put in the same login that you use to log in for to go to the main website, and it's yours. You can go in there and read anything, watch anything, any of it's all there for y'all. So very excited about being able to provide that and excited to get to kick it off with Gospel Discipleship. So any questions about Amplify?
So when you hit share screen, how do you access Amplify? You have to have it on your desktop?
Have it pulled up on your desktop first and have it as a front frame. You can share it one of 2 ways. If it's the very first thing that's on your, like I have like 4 tabs open right now on my web browser, but it's the very first one. So it will show up in 2 options. One is to share my screen, and then I have an option to share that Amplify page because it's the very first one that shows up on my browser. So either one of those would work. If I shared screen, then you can see all the things on my computer. If you share just that pulled up first one, then it will only share the Amplify videos. And if for some reason you find it easier for me to send you the videos that you can download, you just need to have that pulled up like in whatever video player that you have, so it's ready for you to run it from there. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. What else? What other questions around that technology piece? Okay, so you will open each session with prayer and then watching the video and then doing the whatever preliminary discussion part. The first one is to discuss the good characteristics of a small group, and then to talk about, you know, ask some general questions about kind of understanding of discipleship really that you're asking. But for each week, like you'll watch the video on the Markins, then you'll discuss the characteristics of Markin discipleship. That's a place where you can invite those folks that have tested Markin to share some of the characteristics that came up in their description. Because remember, if they've taken the test and haven't read the book and they didn't test Markin, they don't know what Markins are. Okay? So it's a good idea to kind of talk through those characteristics. And if you have been the one that's read the pieces in the congregation guide, you can bring out some of the pieces of strengths and challenges of Markins / Mattheans / Lucans / Johannines, right? So talk in general terms about that. And then it really turns to this time of reflection of the individuals. And that we give a lot of space to the type that is under discussion that day. So give space to those folks on the week that we're talking about Markins. Invite the Markins to share And there's those questions in there. And let them describe their discipleship and how they see if they fit in it or how they push back against the description and all of that. By the way, you'll frequently, yeah, Carrie.
Are we going to know who, like, is there going to be some way, like, are they going to send us their test results, or are they just going to self-identify when we start doing this?
So one of the things that's asked in the beginning is for, and this, you'll need to give these, and we can make this into a little sheet that you could hand out, but, or email. You need to send them the link to the Gospel Discipleship Assessment, or tell them to take it in the book, and then they're supposed to email you their results and me their results. I need to collect them for the whole church so that we can start getting the whole church picture. But yes, it's helpful for you to have them so that you know how to guide the discussion, right? Know who's going to be marking in that space. Anyway, but you will. I always run it. I ran into it today. I did a training for a church today, and you'll find that you tend to run into people that will argue about the results, and I actually love that. And here's what I tell them. You can say, we had that discussion with Michelle. This is what she says. First of all, sometimes people want to know how the test was developed. They want to know what my background is in psychology. My background in psychology is constituted by 1 honors general psych course in undergrad. That was it. Okay. But this is not a psychological assessment. It is a narrative assessment. It is testing what story resonates with people, which we're shaped by the gospel stories, not the gospel psychology, right? And I have 3 degrees in literature. I can talk about story, right? So help them understand that. Also, it's helpful for some folks to know this is the 4th survey. It went through 4 iterations before we landed on this. I was getting what I called false positives, where people were consistently choosing an answer that didn't match their overall type. And so we threw those questions out and really refined the test down. So it has gone through that. But then also help them understand that sometimes people test primarily or secondarily the type of their church and not their own type. Because there are several questions that ask people to reflect on their church. And so sometimes that pushes their church's type up above their actual type, or it puts it in as their secondary type. So invite them to reflect on, maybe what you're really reflecting is as a deep appreciation of who we are as a church. And that's fine, right? And if they still want to fight about it, send them to me. But that's, if you get any of those questions, that's helpful to know as well. So anyway, when you invite whichever one is the types to really answer, reflect on that. And then I do, especially if there's time, invite people that are not that type to reflect on what they think is great about that kind of discipleship and what challenges them about that discipleship. And it doesn't have to be mean. It's just good for us to know that we really see things very differently. And that's great. It's great that we all have a way to reflect our discipleship and grow in our discipleship. And it's helpful for us to understand where there's conflicts are going to be. And they're all going to be conflicts. And there's internal conflicts. So I'm Markin Johannan, as I mentioned. Markins notoriously smash hierarchies. Markins don't like hierarchies. Everybody's gifted by the Holy Spirit, and there is no gift that's better than any other gift. So everyone should be on equal level, right? They should not have hierarchies of gifts, hierarchies of service, any of that stuff. However you're serving, if you're serving the way you're called to serve, that's perfect, okay? Johannines have to have hierarchies in place. Johannines need to know who the great teachers are, so they know who to learn from. So they have this understanding of Jesus is the top, scripture's right below that, pastor's right below that, great teachers right below that. They have to have hierarchies in place. So I spend my life smashing hierarchies and then going, oh, but I need a hierarchy. let's put one in place real quick here, right? And so even those internal tensions, those get writ large amongst us, right? Here's another interesting thing. Johannines in Lucan churches in particular sometimes are the bullies. And it comes from this place. It's a really honestly good place of having standards and expectations of their leadership and the way things are done. And so they keep going in saying, we really need to be doing such and such. And Lucans, who are so hospitable and accommodating and want to make sure everybody feels loved and appreciated, just keep saying, oh yes, we should do that, we should do that. And then it eventually gets out of hand. The best people at winding back the bulliness of Johannines are Markins. So I am constantly checking myself, right? So I get really, we gotta, and then I'll be like, yeah, just chill. So anyway, it's and we will see that amongst ourselves. So invite places for people to reflect on what sounds really exciting, and we start with Markins, and Markins are the weirdest ones. I say that with deep love and affection because I am one, but Markins are just weirdos. And so it drives my mom crazy that I start with a Markin. She's like, why do you start with the crazy people? Like, people are going to think everyone's crazy. And I'm like, no, but we're good crazy. It's good crazy. Right? So rip that Band-Aid off and then go from there. So just, it's okay for people to to express that that's really different, and I don't see discipleship like that, and it's really interesting to see how you see discipleship. So invite that space, and then share where they need to go for the next week, and share prayer requests with one another, and close in prayer. So open in prayer, close in prayer, and that's how a typical week is going to work, just like that. Just mostly, that's why I say you're really a facilitator. You're not going to be teaching about this. You're really going to be, okay, let's discuss what these characteristics are, and then let's just open it up for discussion. So that's how that 5 weeks is gonna work. Does anybody have any questions about that reality?
What do you consider a good time frame for a meeting?
I mean, it can be done in an hour. The longest video is the Markin video. Surprise. The longest video is the Markin video. It's 15 minutes long. Most of them range in between. I think the shortest one is 7 or so, and the longest one's 15. So you can show the video, you can talk briefly about the characteristics, and then just invite time for sharing. It really can be done in an hour. Unless you have a really big group and you want to provide more space for that, then you might go a little bit longer, but an hour is fine. An hour is fine for that. So yeah. What else? What other questions?
So the first class, thankfully, Pat will be teaching. People will, I mean, because I know I did this, there were a few questions that were just, right neck and neck. A, B, what, I mean, someone's going to bring that up. That is going to be a topic in our class.
Yes.
So
So if they do the paper copy, I always, when we were doing paper copies, I would always have people that would turn in with 2 or 3 answers, circle them. I would hand it back to them and go, nope, pick one. Say this. This is what I would share with folks. I'm like, first of all, there is no wrong answer except an answer that isn't reflective of you, right? Don't give me the answer you think you're supposed to give. Because honestly, everybody would end up Matthean. Matthean's like default understanding of discipleship. So so don't give me the answer that you think you're supposed to give. Give me the answer that's true to you. And we are all shaped by all of these stories. We are going to resonate with all of them on some level. Pick the one that's edged out just a smidge. if push came to shove, which one would you pick? And go with that, and then see how it comes out from there. Because it really will be helpful to have this understanding and to have it be really reflective of who you are, instead of trying to be. In fact, there's one guy in our church that's taken it, that he says he tested Markin, and he's like, I'm not Markin at all. And I said, well, it turns out Conway's got a pretty strong Markin strain to it. We are crazy. Right? So far, Conway's got a pretty strong Markin strain. It's possible you're reflecting a lot of what you see of our church. And so that could be why you're testing high Markin. I said, but I want us to really sit down and talk about, because you may be more Markin than you think you are. He said, I'm definitely Matthean. That's my secondary. He's like, that's got me for sure. I'm like, well, great. So you can reorder those in your head. You know, I'm not married to the test results. If you think you're mostly Matthean, great. Then claim Matthean. But let's talk about why you're showing up Markin. And he said, I kind of think I answered the way I want to be. And I said, okay, well, let's talk through that. Well, why are you trying to be something you're not, for one thing? But also, I think you are reflecting a good bit of your church, and that's fine too. So, all right, what else? What other questions about that generally? Okay. Where are you? Yeah, Carrie.
So is there a week, like after we're done discussing all these types, where we talk about like, where do we go from here? How do we bring all this together? You know, we now know this about ourselves. What's the next step? And I haven't read the whole book. Sorry, Michelle.
No, that's okay. So that's a very good segue for how we're gonna close out. So when you've reached the end of these 5 weeks, we have set the next sermon series up to be what could be the next step in this. So the sermon series that follows this is called Conway First, or First Conway. We're still debating which one it's going to be. In the Leader's Guide, it's called Conway First. And we're going to have a series of conversations where we'll start the week with a webinar where we have invited, like, 1 week is business, 1 week is education, 1 week is nonprofits, one is healthcare, one is city government. And we're going to have people from Conway in each of those realms, 3 or 4 on a panel. And we're going to ask, what's going on in your world right now? Well, how has the pandemic changed things? What's your deepest need? What are your priorities? They're going to share that. Then we're going to respond to that in the sermon. But if you decide you want to stay with this, then you just segue right into Conway First. And what you do is we will cut a video and load it onto Amplify. That will be a piece of the webinar. There will also be the full webinar. You'll have access to the full webinar, but we'll have a clip down that you can show as the opening video for the class. And that comes with questions reflecting on, okay, you understand your discipleship now. What in this conversation is breaking your heart or making your heart sing? And how are you going to step in with your understanding of your discipleship? What are you going to do in this space to start getting people to think, how do I now apply my discipleship and apply it in a way that's meaningful for our community in this time, in this place? And so you can continue right on and have the next, it's 5 or 6 weeks of curriculum, of discussion time together into that. And then following that, you will also see that you could stay together as what I call discipleship groups. So we, as Methodists, got off the ground with those accountability groups, remember, where people ask, how is it with your soul? It's a very similar structure, except instead of asking, how is it with your soul, you ask, basically how is it with your discipleship. And what it does at the back, and I'll show this real quick. So past Conway First, I'll share my screen. Where is it? Here we go. So, oh, and by the way, just one quick note, we're going out of order in the book. We actually do Johannines before we do Lucans. Lucans is how we end, because we're probably a Lucan church. And so we wanted to finish out with that, but also because the last words Jesus speaks in Luke are actually in Acts, and it's start here in Jerusalem, go out to Judea and Samaria, and then go to the ends of the earth, and that's World Communion Sunday. So it fits really good to do World Communion Sunday around this go to the ends of the earth. So we're going a little bit out of order, so just be aware of that. But here's what you do with Conway First. You write what week it is and what the topic is. Watch the webinar, gather, open in prayer, watch the short clip, and here are your points of discussion. Having heard from the panel and this week's topic, what did you hear that breaks your heart? What did you hear that makes your heart sing? How could you live out your discipleship in this situation described in Conway? What other resources would you need to make the difference you're feeling called to make? And what will your next step be? And everybody won't necessarily have a response in any given week. But somebody may have something that just catches fire with them, and that's what we're looking for. And then note that the final week is Commitment Sunday, and for that gathering, go around the room and listen to the plans each person has for living out their discipleship in Conway. And then you need to decide if you'll continue being a discipleship small group, if you'll return to traditional Sunday school material, or if you will disband. So here's the discipleship small groups. And it describes it up here, but basically what you do is you pick 3 or 4 people in any given week, unless you decide to meet for 2 hours. But you pick 3 or 4 people. You have someone serve as a coach or a guide, and someone serve as the disciple. And I would say rotate out who the guide is. This does not need to fall on you. If there is somebody who is good at guiding, if you've got a Johannines can be really good at guiding. If you've got somebody that's really gifted at guiding, they might want to be the primary guide, but I still say rotate it out, because first of all, someone's going to have to guide them at some point too. But you would each week pick 3 or 4 people to go through this process. What is your gospel discipleship type? Do you feel like your type still fits you? Because you can change. And so if yes, proceed. If not, ask why. And so stop and just do the reflection around that for that week. And then if that's all in place, then you ask either, how have you intentionally grown in your discipleship since we heard from you last? Or how have you grown in the realms of spiritual formation, worship, service, and witness? That matches up with the book. So that's why that's in there. And then you can ask, how do you need to grow in these 4 realms? And then you go back to these questions that we practiced asking in Conway First. What is breaking your heart right now, or what is making your heart sing right now? How could you express your discipleship to enter into those things breaking your heart or making your heart sing? What goal do you have to grow in your discipleship in the next few weeks? So every time you sit with that person as the disciple, they're going to make a new commitment to what they're going to do in their discipleship. And then what is the first step you need to make towards achieving that goal? Now, they maybe they make this goal right here. You check in with them, they come back around in 3 weeks, and they say, you know what, I didn't really do what I needed to do on that. And then you give some space for, well, what derailed you? And maybe their goal is, again, to do that thing. But maybe they say, you know, it turns out that really didn't resonate with me the way I thought it would. I want to try this other thing. Yeah. But it's a way of giving each other space to reflect on your discipleship and make that commitment to grow in your discipleship. Now, I will say that this process is going to match. We are going to put a discipleship system in place at Conway, and Michael have already talked about this. But it's not going to be something that fits easily on a, bulletin board. We're actually going to take a personal approach of sitting down with people and coaching them in their discipleship. And this process will very much mirror what we do with folks. And then one of the things that we will do if we work with them, especially if they aren't currently in a small group, is start tying them into a small group that will hold them accountable for their discipleship group. So we'll start putting this in place. We're going to start building that DNA, and we're doing that because it matches your pastors. It matches your what is likely your church's type, but it also matches your two pastors' type. So, because Michael is Luke and Markin, by the way. The Markin piece of wanting everybody to know what they're gifted in and be empowered for that is critical in that understanding. So essentially, you have before you easily 10 weeks of potential curriculum, but also stuff past that. And you can mix this in, like if you do have an existing Sunday school class, maybe every 4 or 5 weeks, instead of doing a video or reading a book or chapter or something like that, you say, okay, next week we're going to stop and do some discipleship reflection. And so you just hop in with that. You pick 3 or 4 people, you reflect on your discipleship, and the next week you go on with your, and it might be that it becomes really helpful at picking what kind of curriculum you want to do. If you're finding that a lot of people are hungry for new ways of understanding spiritual formation, then you say, okay, you know what, as a group, we're going to study centering prayer. And we're going to try that out, because obviously there's a hunger here for that kind of thing. So it may help you discern who you are in that sense as well. Okay, questions?
Let's see if I understand this. On the 6th, the sermon series begins.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the meantime, we should encourage all of our members in the group discussion to get the book, the participant's guide, and take the assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And send the results to the leader and to you.
Yep.
And the week following the first sermon,
mm-hmm.
we should have a session that would begin with one of the clips, one of the films.
It's an introduction. It basically talks about gospel discipleship. So just so that you have an overall narrative of what the videos are going to do. Back when I did paper test only, I got everybody's actual scores. It irritates me that they won't give people their actual scores. Like, I would love for you to see, you're a Lucan 10, a Markin 7, Matthean 2, and a Johannine, whatever number is left, right? I'd love for you to be able to see that, but Abingdon said that was too expensive. So that didn't happen. Back in the day when we did the paper test, that's what I got on everybody, was their numbers. And because of that, I would have people that would score a 6.6 and a 5.5. And there were 22 questions. So I said, if I asked 2 more questions, you might have been a 6.666, not a 6.66. Right? So I would tell folks that got a 6.655, you're effectively what I called a 4-typer. You have all 4 pretty evenly in balance. Well, there's a pastor.
Some of us literary types might say divergent.
There you go. That's true. Okay, so anyway, I had a pastor. Her name's Andrea Cummings. She was a pastor for Pulaski Heights and St. Luke in Little Rock. Now she's at First Bentonville. But she scored that way. And so what we did with the narrative of the videos was I told her that you've got all 4, but one of them's going to be more meaningful for you in this moment. You need to figure out what that is. So I send her to interview people that are scored on the types, each of the rest of the types. So she's in all of the videos, and so you'll get to see me explain to her the whole process of gospel discipleship, and then you'll get to see her sent on her journey. And then after that, you'll see her interview each of the types. Some really fun stories in there, by the way. Yeah.
So after they take the assessment and know their score, they should read the chapter that deals with what type they are.
That would be great, but everybody needs to read all of those chapters. That's part of their assignment. So they can read it right when they got their assessment if they want, or they can read it the week that they talk about that type.
and then there is a sermon. And are there corresponding readings to go with that sermon?
That's in that leader's guide, in the facilitator's guide. It will tell, it says readings, all, and it tells you the chapter that describes that type. And then it says leader or facilitator. And then it tells the additional pieces in the congregation guide that would be helpful for you to read. So yes, so every week, share with the folks. So you need to read episode 1, marking discipleship for next week. And invite people to do that. And again, some will do it and some will not.
And so there would probably be a session, a class meeting devoted to each type.
There is a class devoted to each type. There's a sermon devoted to each type. Yes.
Through the first 4 or 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first week will be the introductory sermon. Second will be Markins. Third will be Mattheans. Fourth will be Johannines. We do go out of order, as I said. And the 5th will be Lucans. And that will bring the sermon series to a close and can bring that time together. Now, I will say, Carrie, to your point, is there a session where everybody's going to kind of summarize that? If you decide you don't want to go straight into Conway first, and you want to kind of end it there, you might take that first week after that and do that discipleship reflection piece that's past Conway first, right? You could do that there as a sort of summary piece. And there is an epilogue video if you want to watch the epilogue video. It's loaded on there too. It basically, though, just Andrea summarizes what she loved about each of the types and then tells you which type she picked, which, by the way, is not where she is right now. I'm teasing her about that. It's like, you picked that type and then got appointed to a new place and there's a different need now and you're not behaving like that type anymore. So, but anyway, yeah. So that's how that works, Jim. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. What else? What other questions?
Michelle, do you think on the Conway First piece, do you think that it would be possible to do just kind of a quick check-in and spend 10 or 15 minutes on that, like at the beginning of a Sunday school class?
Sure.
If people had watched the clip ahead of time?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, one great way to do it would be, hey, let's just take 10 minutes. Anybody really, like, here's your heart on fire about something from that. And see who says, oh, I really got to talk about this. I'm really feeling strongly like I ought to do something about such and such, or we ought to talk about such and such, or, that sort of thing. Yeah, that would be great. It'd be great. Yeah. What else?
To go into this video, have you already discussed how to, I know you.
Oh, I sent you the description, the sheet. So you got to type in that my.amplifymedia.com / Conway First United Methodist Church CO. It's huge long. You can blame Todd Burris for that. I think he's the one who set us up with that, right? And then it will ask you for an access code, and that 6-digit or 6-letter code, LRG VJW or whatever it is. If that's actually right, I'm excited about that. But you type that access code in, and that links you to our church. And then you set up with your email address and your password, your account. And then each time you just need to go to that my.amplify.com / Conway First United Methodist Church CO site. So that's why I say bookmark it. And then you don't have to put in the access code every time after that. Just unless if you choose to have your computer save your login information, then it'll just take you right in. If not, you just have to type your email address and your password. So.
And is it okay to share that with everybody?
Please do.
In the group?
Please do. Yes. And encourage them to use the other videos that are out there. Yeah, absolutely. We will start promoting that, not this week, but next week to launch with Gospel Discipleship. We'll start promoting that out to the whole church to to start getting signed up. I would love it if you all would sign up, not per person in the household, but per household if you can, because we do get charged for the number of users that we have. So if you can come up with a family one that everybody can use, that'd be great. If you need more than one, we're not going to sweat that, but yeah, if you can do that, that'd be awesome. What else? Okay. Well, I am around, obviously, and available for whatever you need. I'm very grateful for this. I know that I've got at least one of you that's not directly tied into a small group, but we've got a lot of people that are interested in this that are not currently part of small groups. We may send some of them to existing small groups to tap in with you all, especially if you are meeting at a time that works for them. But we may also, my hope is that we get to develop some new small groups out of this as well. And we have some folks now that will help lead that. It would be helpful to me to know when your group is meeting for that reason. So if you can just shoot me a note and say, this is what we've decided to do, this is when we've decided to meet, then if I have somebody that can't be plugged into a new one that I can say, hey, then let me hook you up with this group. We can put them in there. And if there's anything I need to know about your group, like if you have a particular emphasis or for young families or something like that, then let me know that too, so I don't send a 85-year-old person to a group of college kids, although that'd be really cool, in all honesty. So, okay, anything else?
I have a good one. So I noticed that Pastor Jacob Armstrong made a comment on the back of one of your books. And my family moved from his Mount Juliet, Tennessee church to our church. So
awesome.
He's one of our dear friends. And we were among the first members of Providence Methodist
Oh,
Church.
wow.
So.
He has just done incredible work out there. I was super excited when he wrote for the back of my book. I was like, oh, I got a star. I didn't see the back covers or the interior covers before in fact, just brief funny story. Because my book came out when the pandemic kicked off, it came out the end of March. It was supposed to come out the end of April, but it came out the end of March. And they shipped my copies to the publishing house in Nashville, and Nashville was shut down. No one could go anywhere. And so my copies were sitting in Nashville when all my friends started shooting me texts saying that their advance orders on Amazon were shipping. And so a whole bunch of people got my book before I did. So, but when I finally got to see it, I was so excited at all the people that they'd gotten to read it, and it's very exciting. So, anyway, it's fun. So, thanks for sharing that, Carrie. I really appreciate that. What else? Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you all again so much. If you have any questions, if anything's unclear, please let me know. If there's anything that would be more helpful for you, let me know that. And I'm just really excited to see this go. So, all right. Thank you all so much. Have a blessed rest of the evening.
Thank
Get
you.
some good rest.